Hi, Ed DeMarcia. Please hit like, follow, share down below and help us beat the algorithm on YouTube. And also, please consider subscribing to the Trends Journal by going to trendsjournal.com. All the links are down below. We always appreciate you watching. Thanks.
And after the war, which we won it big. Without us, right now, you'd all be speaking German and a little Japanese, perhaps. After the war, we gave Greenland back to Denmark. How stupid were we to do that? But we did it. But we gave it back. But how ungrateful are they now? What we did for Israel was amazing. But that's nothing compared to what we have planned for the United States, Canada, and the rest of the world. We are going to build a dome like no other. We did it. We did it for Israel. And by the way, I told Bibi, stop taking credit for the dome. That's our technology. That's our stuff. But they had a lot of courage, and they were good fighters, and they did a good job, and we wiped out the Iran nuclear threat like nobody can believe. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. That, Venezuela, taking down Soleimani. But the problem with NATO is that we'll be there for them 100%. But I'm not sure that they'd be there for us. If we gave them the call, gentlemen, we are being attacked. We're under attack by such and such a nation. I know them all very well. I'm not sure that they'd be there. Believe it, we got good reviews in that speech. Usually they say he's a horrible dictator type person. I'm a dictator. But sometimes you need a dictator. But they didn't say that in this case.
A lot to unpack here. Larry Johnson, he's the former CIA analyst, and you could find his writings on Sonar 21. Larry Johnson, thank you for joining the Trends Journal.
Thank you so much, Ed.
There is a lot to unpack there.
Oh, yeah. So you should have had a musical introduction. Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train.
Crazy Train. I mean, you know, Barry, I was watching this, and I want to hear your take on this. I remember back in 2015, 2016, when Trump first took office, and people were like, wow, I mean, we never heard a politician speak like this. It was like he was kind of irreverent, and he was like, it was a new voice that we never really heard. He just seemed like he really spoke to the people.
Right.
And he was funny at times, and he seemed like he was sharp. He's striking me now as that guy you knew in high school who used to be really funny and popular, and now you see him at the 30-year reunion, and you start saying, oh man, that it's not landing like it used to.
Yeah.
What's your take on what you just watched at Davos? Obviously, there's a lot to unpack, but your general theme.
Well, again, when you listen to his voice, he's talking in a monotone, essentially. He's like Dustin Hoffman in the movie Rain Man, you know, except I genuinely believe Trump is now mentally impaired. He's got early stages of dementia. One of the signs, symptoms that are manifest outwardly is what's called confabulation. When you say things that are flatly not true, but you genuinely believe they're true. So it's not that you're lying, because lying means you know something's not true. You know you're just, it's like your wife says, hey, do I look fat in this dress? And you say, no. you know you're lying. Okay. As an example.
My wife knows I'm always honest with that.
Yeah, I know. That's trying to get you in trouble. I've been married 50 years, so I can get away with this. But, here we had, like in that, we just heard Trump say, we won World War II. Well, no, we didn't. We did help the Soviet Union win World War II and defeat Germany. But it was the Soviet Union that engaged the vast bulk of the German army, not the United States. Yeah, and I'm not saying the United States didn't contribute, but just in terms of lives lost, total combat deaths by U.S. soldiers, airmen, Marines in the European theater, which includes North Africa, 189,000. That's it. And then there were another 130,000 that died from disease, accidents, but they weren't combat deaths. Whereas Russia lost 11 million. We're not even in the same ballpark. We suffered roughly 1/10 of the casualties that the Soviet Union suffered, and they inflicted 70% of the casualties on the Germans. So, but he's confabulating there. Then you stopped 8 wars. Simply not true. Objectively not true. But he really believes that it's true. And then, his increased tendency to use profanity
Yeah.
when he's in talking to some of these groups. He didn't do that in his first term because, you've got that, there's that social part in your brain that says, okay, I may think this, but I shouldn't say this. When that dies, you don't get that feedback loop telling you, you shouldn't say that. You just say it, blurt it out. And anybody who's had an elderly parent that has gone through some mental changes like that, well, you recognize that behavior. That, my mom, when she was 85, she was saying things she never would have said when she was 50. Now she may have thought them, but she didn't say it. She had some control over what she was doing. So that's what we're seeing with Trump. And he is surrounded by a bunch of enablers. Nobody's stepping up and saying, hey, Mr. President, we shouldn't say that or do that. I mean, let's take Greenland as an example. What the hell's going on there? You can't point to a single instance in the last 10 years, and even before that, where the United States made a request of Greenland to do something militarily, to post some troops there, to move some aircraft, whatever. Greenland and or Denmark turned us down and said, hell no, stay the way out. Never. He's creating a straw man, an issue that up to this point, Denmark hasn't refused to allow the United States to use Greenland as a base for military operations. Secondly, the notion that China and Russia represent a threat to Greenland. Are you kidding me? Has nobody looked at a globe map of the world? Russia right now has about 2/3 of the Arctic Circle to its north of its border. 2/3. It doesn't, it doesn't need natural resources that are in Greenland.
So what's the point? Why is Trump doing this? Because all of a sudden we forget that Venezuela ever happened. No one's even talking about where's Maduro? Is he still in Brooklyn? Do you know? Does anyone know? I would imagine. But no one talks about that anymore. That's gone. We just kidnapped the president. And now we're talking about taking over Greenland. And and Trump now today said there won't be a military force. But would you believe him if you were Europe?
Hell no, not at all. But again, so, I mean, let's think this through. We say, okay, give us Greenland. What does that mean? Does that mean that we're going to have a U.S. administrator running all government operations in Greenland in terms of keeping the lights on, running the utilities, making sure they got fresh water, maybe paying for the oil imports that they use to fuel the automobiles that are on Greenland? I mean, really, how do we do that? Are we going to send an army of bureaucrats to Greenland? I guarantee you, if we do something like that, people in Greenland will start attacking our people, which means then you have to send soldiers. So I don't understand how you quote control Greenland. But what bothers me is there's so much gaslighting about why we're doing this. Some say, oh yeah, we need the rare earth minerals. For the love of God, people, stop with this rare earth minerals crap, because we keep pretending like we don't have rare earth minerals. We have them. They're not processed. Venezuela has raw rare earth minerals, but they're not processed. That's the problem. You got to process them to produce the final product that can be used by largely a military industrial complex. So we got just 30 miles north of me here in Bradenton, the Mosaic mine. They were mining gypsum, and when they take it out of the ground, they leave all these tailings. Those tailings, these piles, are filled with actual rare earth minerals. The problem is they're not processed, so you'd have to scoop them all up, ship them to China, or start building processing plants, which will take at least 2 years, 3 years maybe, and is going to create some real potential environmental hazards that are going to have to be mitigated. But, we keep just, we're doing this for rare earth minerals, or we're doing it to stop Russia. Russia's got is the number one country in the world for natural resources. It doesn't need natural resources. And it has done nothing to interfere with U.S. shipping going past Greenland. And on top of it, if the excuse is, oh, well, we need to get control of Greenland so we can exploit the Arctic. Yeah, the United States is in a really good position to do that. We got one icebreaker. One. Well, we actually have two, but one's broken, okay? So we got one. Russia has 10 nuclear-powered icebreakers and 30 conventionally powered icebreakers. They've got us 40-1. What the hell do we think we're going to do? If we take the entire $1.5 trillion that Trump is proposing for the Department of War, or it used to be Defense, and devote that entirely to building icebreakers and being able to, quote, compete in the Arctic, again, you come back, what are we competing for? What is it that is up there that we absolutely need now in order, and we're going to have to bankrupt ourselves in the process? So this is, this is a power play, a pure power play by the part of Trump that does, it's not grounded in reality. Because look, if the issues are we're afraid that Russia and China are going to take over, okay, let's activate Article 5 under NATO, where all of NATO comes together to defend Greenland from the Russians and the Chinese, who are not posing a threat, and they're not threatening. In fact, did you see Putin the other day? He spent 10 minutes explaining the history of the United States trying to get control of Greenland. It was basically, and then, they're trolling Trump. They said, this would be great. Trump will go down in history as this great president for taking control of Greenland. Because the Russians know the more they encourage this, the greater the division with Europe, the more likely to break up NATO. So they're happy.
That's interesting. I guess Trump would say that he needs Greenland for strategic purposes. There's that over-the-horizon nuclear threat that if we have a base already on the territory that can, I guess, has that sensor that can see if an ICBM was launched, and that's one of the top priorities. But that doesn't change that base is still there. And my next question, Larry, is if you were in the war room with Trump and they wanted it, about a few weeks ago, the Daily Mail reported that Trump had his generals come up with an invasion type plan for Greenland, how they could seize it militarily. If Trump wanted to go forward with seizing Greenland, let's say militarily, how do you think that would play out? Would he start landing military assets there and not explain anything to Denmark, or would he start just like populating the island with military resources? What would that look like if Trump just went militarily into Greenland?
No, you'd probably have to deploy about 15,000 soldiers that would be able to take up, military police and administrators, engineers to take control and run Greenland. But then, you know what? We're going to get into a position where we might be killing Greenlanders. And it's not going to be a good look. Again, it's one thing to talk about, we're going to take control of Greenland. Okay, walk me through the nuts and bolts. What exactly are we going to do? Because Greenland already has a functioning society. They already have a local government. They don't have complete independence from Denmark, but they essentially have de facto independence from Denmark. They're their own country. They're not very, very, very sparsely populated, despite this enormous landmass, because most of it is not green, but it's covered with snow and glaciers. So, and what is it that Trump wants to do? Does he want to establish a bigger military base than what we already have there? Maybe. But again, it's going up against a straw man, because Russia's not threatening Greenland, and Russia has not been threatening the United States directly. But Russia's been responding to threats from the United States. I mean, it wasn't Putin that launched 91 drones at Mar-a-Lago on December 28th. It was the United States CIA helping Ukraine target Putin's official residence, where apparently some of his family, I don't know if it was his daughter and her husband and children that were there, but the Russians took great umbrage at this, extremely angry. So it's as you said, it's such a distraction from what we ought to be focused on at a time when the U.S. Treasury bills are under attack. They're getting dumped regularly by China and others. Two of the largest purchasers right now in Europe are the United Kingdom and France, and we're busy trying to piss them off It's like, who does business like this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My next question, Larry, is how would Europe respond if Trump went forward with seizing Greenland? We had Stephen Miller tell CNN recently that they wouldn't respond. The U.S. could just essentially take Greenland.
Yeah.
You had Dmitry Medvedev from Russia, the former president and head of their, I believe, or is on the board of the chairman of the security. He said that Europe would also do nothing.
Yeah.
We've heard some tough talk from Macron and from Starmer and Merz. Do you think that they would do anything to resist a military takeover?
They remind me of Leonardo DiCaprio in the movie Titanic at the end, when he's floating in the icy water, talking to Rose, and he goes, "Oh, I'm going to write a strongly worded letter to the White Star Line." Okay.
Yes, I know that scene.
Yeah, that's Europe. They're going to write a strongly worded letter. Oh, we're really upset. We protest this. What are they going to do? They can't do anything. I mean, well, let me take that back. They could do some things if they had a pair of balls, but they don't. They're a bunch of spineless nematodes. What they're going to do, what they could do, they could start unloading and selling off U.S. treasuries as a first step, and then tell the United States, we're closing all of your military bases in Europe. And at that point, you got the dissolution of NATO. That's the end of NATO. They're not going to do that. They're too fearful that without the United States, they're going to get run over by Russia. They've convinced themselves of that, and the Russians are looking at Europe as just a hot mess. Good God, who wants to get involved with that? It's like, Europe's married to this spouse who's a drug addict, has no fiscal discipline, rarely bathes, and yet Europe thinks, oh, the Russians want to take my spouse, and the Russians are looking over there going, God, they're fat, they're ugly, they stink, they're tattooed. No, forget about it. They don't want that. But this is Europe. I don't know why Trump chose to pick this fight at this moment. Now, I know some like my friend Alex Craner, he believes there's an element of 3D chess here, that Trump's actually coordinating with the Russians and the Chinese behind the scenes, and that this is about breaking up Europe. I don't think that's a deliberate policy on the part of Trump. I think it's an accidental discovery, because the other combinations, the other signs we see of his disconnect from reality. I've stopped 8 wars. No, you haven't.
Yeah.
But he believes it.
And then also, you mentioned about back to his mental state. During his speeches at Davos, he kept referring to Greenland as Iceland.
Yeah.
And people took notice. He didn't do it once or twice. He said it multiple times. And people were like, that's unusual.
Well, and then he also announced that he'd reiterated he stopped the war in Azerbaijan.
Yeah, he's never been able to pronounce Azerbaijan.
Yeah, it's real Azerbaijan. Get that Z in there.
Who should be telling him that? Who in the administration should be like writing on a cue card how to pronounce these things?
Well, look, it's not that he doesn't know how to pronounce it. Again, it's the mental changes that have taken place. He's 79 years old, and the brain's not functioning like it used to. We saw that. Look, we saw this with Joe Biden. The White House completely covered up and lied about his mental condition for 4 years. And then it's only afterwards they say, we knew about it. Yeah, this is terrible. They're doing the same thing with Trump, for God's sake.
This will hurt J.D. Vance. If this is true, let's say, for example, this is true and he continues to deteriorate. J.D. Vance wants to be the next president, and he'll face the same potential outcome that Harris faced, because she helped hide Biden's decline.
Yeah.
And Vance won't be able to hide from that.
Yeah, Vance he's in a very difficult position right now, but at least, from what I've heard, he has at least been one of the voices that does speak up and challenge Trump on certain issues, particularly like bombing Iran. Going in and say, no, you don't want to do this. That's going to be bad. Don't do it. It is, again, we've got Republicans doing the same thing that the Democrats did with Biden. And, Trump Trump is mentally unfit to be president.
Tell me, Larry, now I'd like to just move over to Russia. Lavrov gave a very long press conference recently, I think maybe yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday. Right.
Yesterday. And he spoke about his conversations with Marco Rubio, and it was interesting. He said Rubio used the quote from The Godfather that women and children can be reckless, men cannot be. Don Vito said that during the movie. What's your take on Lavrov's press conference? It struck me as though the negotiations with Trump's going pretty well with Russia. Things are getting a little bit better. Did you see any daylight from Lavrov's speech yesterday?
Well, in terms of tone, yeah, it looks things are going well. But in terms of actual substance, nothing's happened. I mean, Russia has not backed off its demands at all. It's expanded its demands. The United States is schizophrenic. Trump, on the one hand, keeps saying he wants to negotiate with Russia and get this settled, but then he allows the CIA to continue to conduct operations where they directly try to kill Putin. And again, I think the Russians, they're in a little bit of a position where they need to pull their head out of their ass. They're being too willing to try to reach a deal with the United States. I think Sergei Karaganov, who I know, who's been a leading voice about turning to the East and away from the West, I think he's exactly right. Russia has no future with the United States or Europe, period. There is no future there. And you've got to come to that realization. Russia needs to come to that realization and move on. They're like they're like the guy who was dating Madonna, wanting her to marry him, and because she would then become like a nun, be only faithful to him. Ain't gonna happen. Okay, I mean, she's a wild girl. She's gonna do the wild girl thing.
Yeah. Russia's been always holding out hope to come back into the fold, right, into the West, and I guess I've heard people say that's why they haven't gone so strongly into Ukraine during the war, and
yeah, that was part of it, and that has changed over the last month, and I think one of the contributing factors was this attempt to kill Putin on December 28th. They are turning off the lights in Ukraine across the board. Right now, anybody that's in an apartment building, condo in Kiev that's more than 10 stories, they've abandoned it. You can only walk up so many flights of stairs carrying water and trying to carry food, and the stores themselves, they're empty. You're not finding the stores shelves filled. It's a real desperate situation now, and I think that's part of the general staff's decision. Okay, we're going to make these cities unlivable, get the civilians out, so then they can attack and without having to risk killing a lot of civilians.
Today at Davos, Trump also said that if he was president and the election wasn't stolen in 2020, Russia would have never invaded Ukraine. He said that repeatedly during the campaign back last year's campaign. Do you agree? When he says comments like that he has a good relationship with Putin and the invasion would have never happened? Do you agree? Is there any truth to Trump when he says that?
Maybe a little, but let's look at the objective fact. During Trump's 4 years in office, from January 2017 to January 19th of 2021, the U.S. military in Europe with NATO conducted more military exercises with Ukraine than had occurred under Joe Biden, or had occurred under Barack Obama, or had occurred under George W. Bush. It was Trump who was giving offensive weaponry to Ukraine. It was in September of 2020 that, as part of the military exercise, someone thought it was a good idea to fly 2 B-52 bombers along the Black Sea coast just outside of Russia territorial waters. So my point in all of this is, in terms of provocative actions that could have precipitated a war, they were doing more under Trump than any of the previous presidents. So, again, he may have been given orders, but the Pentagon and the intelligence community weren't following them. We do know from Doug McGregor that he had ordered a withdrawal of troops from Syria, and they basically, Pentagon said, blew him off. Screw you, we're not doing it. Nothing was ever done. So this is, it's possible he could have negotiated a deal. But remember, Biden had actually agreed with Putin. Putin presented him an agreement, and that was going to limit the deployment of missiles into Poland and Romania. And so Putin thought he had it in the deal, told Lavrov in January, mid-January. Lavrov was with Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, brings up what he thought was the agreement between Biden and Putin. And Blinken says, there's no such deal. No, you can't tell us what we're going to deploy whatever the hell we want. And basically say, you can kiss my ass if you don't like it. Lavrov is like, what? I mean, so would there have been possibly different under Trump? Maybe. But that doesn't, I can't worry about what could have been, should have been. Let's look at what is. Has Donald Trump told the CIA, put an end to your operations, get the hell out of Ukraine? We're not going down that. We're going to stop confronting Russia. No, he hasn't done that. Has he said, we're going to suspend providing intelligence for targeting to the Ukrainians? No, he hasn't done that. Has he reopened flights between the United States and Russia? No, hasn't done that. Has he returned the land, the property, vacation property that the Russian diplomatic corps had in the United States that was seized by Obama in December of 2016? Nope, that hasn't been done either. So, where's the actual demonstrable gestures other than a bunch of talk about what the United States is willing to do to have normal relations with Russia?
Can you explain to me what Steve Witkoff's role is and why he's not the Secretary of State? Because when you hear any world calamity, any problem, any geopolitical problem between Iran, Gaza, Venezuela, I don't know if he was too involved with Venezuela, but generally Ukraine, Russia, it's not Rubio that seems to be doing these negotiations. It seems to be Witkoff and Kushner.
Yeah.
So is he the shadow Secretary of State in your view?
Well, sort of. But again, he has no official standing other than being close to Trump. And this is, they're going back to Moscow apparently today or tomorrow. What are they gonna do? There are tangible things that Trump can do, as I just enumerated, to demonstrate to the Russians they're serious about getting a deal. But if they think that they're going to go and convince Russia to stop in place, to stop bombing Ukraine, to stop taking out power plants, not going to happen. Russia's not going to stop. They have made it quite clear they are going to defeat Ukraine and NATO militarily. That's where this is headed. All this other is just, it's sort of a political theater.
I want to end on Iran and Gaza. Not that they're exactly the same, but back towards the Middle East. Netanyahu announced that Israel will be taking part in the peace board for Gaza. And when I saw that, I thought, are we living in some kind of a bizarro world right now? Netanyahu's the person who's bombed Gaza to ruin is going to be part of the peace board. What's going on with Gaza, the peace board, and moving forward? What's your take on that, Larry?
This is a Trump project to circumvent the United Nations, make the United Nations more irrelevant than it already is. But I think it's going to fail because Trump is trying to create this alternate club. And you've got a lot of governments coming out, yeah, we'll be a part of it. Well, when they get into the fine details of, are decisions made as a collective group? No, decisions, it could be Donald Trump. He'll make the decision, and then everybody has to line up to kiss his ass. That's how that's going to work. And, are there a number of countries out there willing to humiliate themselves? Absolutely. And they'll pay $1 billion for the privilege of humiliating themselves. I mean, this is what, that's why I said, you got to queue up Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train. That's what we're riding. This is not about bringing peace to Gaza. The so-called, again, the world keeps pretending that, oh, we got a ceasefire in place in Gaza. No, we don't. Israel has continued to bomb southern Lebanon. They continue to kill Palestinians. They've now created and made it impossible for Palestinians in the West Bank to travel between Palestinian communities. The Zionists are a bunch of thugs, and all Trump is doing is enabling them.
Now on to Iran. The fun never ends. Larry, trip around the world. Right now, it looks like the U.S. is not going to be attacking anytime soon, or at least will be holding off for a while. Do you see an attack likely during Trump's administration and a follow-up attack on Iran, or did you think that ship has sailed?
No, there'll be a follow-up attack probably by the end of March at the latest. The United States isn't backing away from this at all. The United States is, we continue to lie about what Iran is and quote the threat that Iran poses. I was with in a conversation a week ago Tuesday with a retired 4-star general, and he made the claim Iran has killed thousands of Americans. Okay, I challenge your audience: go out and look. Go to any of the AI search engines and type in how many American civilians has Iran killed since 1979 at the Islamic Revolution, and the answer is between 0 and 50. Okay, that's the American civilians. How many American civilians have been killed by Iranian proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah? That number is less than 600 over 47 years. So then ask about military personnel. That number is about 1,000. So we're looking maximum less than 3,000 over 46 years. And I draw the difference between civilians and military because definition of terrorism that Bibi Netanyahu gave to William F. Buckley, I fully endorse, which is the use of violence against civilians for political purposes. Period. Simple, clean. When you're setting bombs off that are killing U.S. soldiers, U.S. military personnel, I'm not in favor of that, but that's called war. It may be irregular war, it may be an insurgency, whatever, but you're wearing a uniform, you're carrying a gun or should be carrying a gun, and you get killed. Hey, you joined up. That's one of the risks that come with it. Turn it around. How many Iranians has the United States killed, either directly or through proxies? Well, one of the main proxies of the United States in killing Iranians was Iraq. We provided the precursor chemicals that were used to develop mustard gas to carry out attacks, chemical weapon attacks, weapon of mass destruction attacks inside Iran. We are responsible for 500,000 dead Iranians. So put the numbers together. Iran has killed less than 3,000 Americans. We've killed more than 500,000, and they're the terrorist state? It's ridiculous. It's a lie. So
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
What do you see as Trump's top priority out of all the countries that we've mentioned? Do you see Iran as his top priority, or do you see obtaining Greenland, Venezuela oil? What would you say is top of Trump's agenda?
Keeping Israel happy.
Yeah.
That's it. Everything else is peripheral. That he is totally beholden and bought by the Zionists. Miriam Adelson has made that quite clear. She's pumped in $250 million. She's paid a bill. She wants to get the service. Yeah, I mean, it's sad to say, but Trump's lies to the American people about that he wanted to be the peace president. Well, so far he's bombed at least 3 countries in 1 year: Nigeria, Iran, Syria. Minimum.
And Somalia. I think Somalia he's bombed like 15 times.
Yeah. So much for the peace president.
When he took office back in November, did you expect his administration to be run like this up until this point?
No.
You expected it to be better?
Yes. I thought that there would be some competence. And instead, what we're seeing is a clown show, a malevolent clown show.
Well, Larry Johnson, Sonar 21, thank you for joining the Trends Journal. We always love talking to you. We're going to have links below. Please, everyone, follow Larry. It's a great website to keep an eye on. Sonar 21. Larry, thank you for joining the Trends Journal.
Hey, Ed, thanks for the invite. We'll see you again. Thanks.